Sox fans, welcome to Believe in White Sox here on a Thursday morning. White Sox have an off day on the East Coast before they get started with the Baltimore Orioles tomorrow night for a 3-game series at Oriole Park at Camden Yards before the Sox will return home next week. And it will be a divisional week for the Sox as they will play 4 against the best team in the American League right now, the Detroit Tigers, and then 3 against the Kansas City Royals. Welcome again to Believe in White Sox. I'm Greg, the host of this program. Make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe on all the podcast platforms as well. So, the title of this episode is Positives or Permutating. And the reason why I titled that is that you have to look at what this White Sox team is through somewhat of rose-colored glasses. Because this team, unlike last year's team, actually has the potential to be decent. And the reason they have the potential to be decent is that you see them in their best moments actually play well. And I think that the last 6 games are proof that when they are at their best, they can play really, really damn well. So the White Sox take 2 of 3 from the Texas Rangers. Friday night against Texas, Sean Burke was terrific. 6 innings of 1-run baseball, and the White Sox bullpen was really good to close the game out. Really solid effort from Chase Meidroth, who went 2 for 4 in that game. And then you got RBIs from Andrew Benintendi, Luis Robert Jr., and Joshua Palacios. Palacios, by the way, a great hit on a low changeup that scored Luis Robert, who reached on a 3-base error. Then on Saturday, White Sox scored 10 runs against the Texas Rangers. They had probably one of their most complete offensive games of the year. 13 hits in this game. They also drew 8 walks. This White Sox team has shown that they can be a more patient team when they want to be. Really solid performances from Miguel Vargas, Andrew Benintendi, Luis Robert had a 3-hit day. Joshua Palacios, who I have criticized at times, has been really, really good in certain spots, and he had a 2-hit game in this game. Bryce Wilson got the start. He wasn't good, but Mike Vassell has been phenomenal as a Rule 5 pick out of the White Sox bullpen. He goes 3 scoreless innings out of the pen in this game, and Jack Leiter, who everybody thought was going to be the next big thing, he has been up and down, but he issued 5 walks in this game for Texas, and I think that there's something going on with this Rangers team to where they are severely underperforming. I think a lot of people were surprised last year at how bad Texas was coming off of a World Series win. I think that the window for this Rangers team is about near close just because of how they're performing and how bad some of their stars have been. I mean, I went on Sunday, and Sunday's the game that is what all White Sox fans are going to point to in terms of the negative, because Sunday's game is when you look at the first 2 games of this series and you say, this team actually is better than we thought they were, and they actually play well. And then you get to what happens in a game like Sunday. So the White Sox biggest problem at this point in time, amongst the other big problems that the organization has, is that they don't have a true closer. They are trying whatever they can in terms of ideas for who is this team's closer. And I think that Sunday unfortunately proved that until the White Sox have some sort of veteran arm, they can piecemeal the rest of the bullpen together all they want, but it's not going to end up working. So we'll recap the 9th inning as follows. So Jordan Leisure comes in with a 3-2 lead, and first batter he faces Josh Young. It's an 0-2 count, he hits him. Then Jake Berger comes up and doubles. So you got second and third with nobody out. So you got the tying run at third. It's a 3-2 ball game. Tying run at third, go ahead run at second. Then Alejandro Ozuna strikes out swinging. And then this is, and I didn't know what it was going to be called at the time, but it eventually was ruled an error on the White Sox. Sox bring the infield in. They had the infield in for the Ozuna at bat. Kyle Higashioka is up at the plate. Miguel Vargas makes a really, really nice play. And Young at third is probably going to end up scoring. It was a play where I don't think if Vargas goes home, he ends up getting the runner at home. So they end up giving the RBI to Higashioka on this play. But this is where, and it goes back to a move that we actually recorded our last episode before this move happened. Lenyn Sosa's playing first base. Vargas makes a good throw to first and probably gets Higashioka, who's a catcher, running down the line. But here's the problem. When Lenyn Sosa catches the throw from Vargas, his foot is 2 feet off the base. And it's not because it was a wild throw from Vargas. Sosa was set, fielding a clean throw from third, with his foot 2 feet off the base. These are the little things that drive White Sox fans crazy, but these are also the things that are the reason why the White Sox are 3-13 as of Thursday in one-run games. Again, I'll harp on it till I'm blue in the face. This is the difference between the White Sox being a mediocre team and being a bad team, is the fact that they've played 16 one-run games and they've won 3 of them. This is the biggest issue for a team that after 46 games is 18-38. Say they split those one-run games, and that's 8 wins instead of 3 wins in one-run games. They're 23-33, which looks a lot better than 18-38. And actually gives you hope and feeling that this team is moving somewhere. And they are moving somewhere. But that ends up tying the game. And then Adolis Garcia doubles into the left center field gap, scores 2 runs. It's a 5-3 game. And then in the bottom of the 9th inning, this is what really gets me. Edgar Caro leads off with a double against Robert Garcia. Sosa strikes out swinging. Michael A. Taylor doubles down the left field line, scores Caro, and it's a 1-run game, and you've got the tying run at second. And then for whatever reason, Michael A. Taylor decides that he's going to dance off second base and he gets picked off. If you're the tying run and there's 1 out, you have to have the awareness to not be overly aggressive. Why on God's green earth is Michael A. Taylor even in a position to get picked off? He's a fast runner. His lead from second should be short. With 1 out, you cannot take any risk when you are trying to tie the game. So instead of tying run at second, 1 out, there's nobody on and 2 out. And by the way, Vinny Capra at the plate. If you want to talk about guys that I have no idea why they're on the team, you want to look at Vinny Capra's stats, and it's a decent enough sample size for somebody that has been in the big leagues with 2 different organizations this year. He started the year with the Milwaukee Brewers and is now with the White Sox. You want to know what his numbers are? In 56 at-bats, he's hitting .071. 4 hits in 56 at-bats. 15 strikeouts. So he's striking out a little over 20% of the time. And he doesn't get hits. It's, to me, frustrating that you have this guy on the team and you sent down Jacob Amaya, who isn't good, but he's certainly better than this. I mean, good Lord. Well, actually, Jacob Amaya is hitting .097, so he's not better than this, but worse than that by not that much. So I think that the fact that Josh Rojas is on this team should mean that Vinny Capra is not, and why Vinny Capra is on the team, but Brooks Baldwin, hitting in the 215s, can't stay on the big league roster. To me, and it goes back to our previous episode of this White Sox roster construction not making any sense. So Brooks Baldwin is somebody that's worth sending down, but Vinny Capra isn't. I don't understand the logic that goes into some of these decisions. But then we move through the schedule. White Sox lose 2-1 in New York on Monday in another situation where they end up getting walked off on. They got a 1-0 lead going to the bottom of the eighth. Mets tie the game in the bottom of the eighth inning on a sac fly from Juan Soto, and then a sac fly from Francisco Lindor in the ninth. And once again, the White Sox bullpen not good. This time it was Steven Wilson that ends up blowing it because he walked two guys, and that's how the Mets ended up getting the winning run across. Cam Boozer was not good after being very good the day before. Adrian Hauser has been phenomenal. He has not allowed an earned run in his first two starts with the White Sox. I don't know how the White Sox figured out that he was going to be this good, but he has been this good. And then Tuesday, Sox lose 6-4 to the Mets, and this is a game where the Sox got down early. Jonathan Cannon had a very rough first inning, 4 runs scored by the Mets in the first, but he gets through 5 2/3 innings, allowing 5 earned runs, and the Mets are able to hold on at the end. White Sox scored 2 in the 7th inning. Mets scored 1 in the bottom of the 8th, and then a really solid performance yesterday for the Southsiders as they beat the Mets 9-4. Brandon Eisert getting the win out of the bullpen after Shane Smith had a pretty rough start. He issued 5 walks in 3 2/3 innings, but Mike Vassell comes in again and was just solid as a rock. 3 scoreless innings out of the bullpen. Miguel Castro, I saw pitch on Sunday and really liked his stuff, but he's going to go on the IL. So Mike Talkman has been solid since coming back from the IL, and Andrew Benintendi had a phenomenal game yesterday, 3 for 4 with 4 runs batted in. Benintendi, a solo shot in the 8th inning for the White Sox. And look, this lineup is performing better, and I think that a lot of it is due to the consistent performances from guys like Miguel Vargas and Lenyn Sosa. And I think that when you look at the upward trend for the White Sox, you have to look at the improvement from Miguel Vargas, who I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of left for dead when this season began, thinking that, oh, this is a former Dodger top prospect that they were very willing to part ways with and was terrible last year. But something has happened mechanically that has made him a better hitter in the month of May. Look at April. In 25 games in the month of April, he hit .217 with 1 homer, 7 runs batted in. He struck out 20 times in 92 at-bats, had an on-base at .294, an OPS of .598. That's in 25 games in the month of April. We're not counting the month of March in here just because I don't want to filter those stats out like that. In the month of May, he's played 24 games. He's hitting .275 with a .343 on base, .947 OPS, 7 homers, 17 runs driven in. He's only struck out 14 times in 91 at-bats. And now Miguel Vargas is someone that's being asked to play both first base and third base. His improvement has really sparked this White Sox team. And I think that him coming into his own and him feeling comfortable, you're starting to feel like, if you're a White Sox fan, that this is somebody that you could potentially rely upon to be a franchise cornerstone. Again, I don't want to continue to make these statements about the future right now, but I think that it's worth noting how good he's been and that it's something that can be sustainable for the future. Lenyn Sosa, though, is another guy that we're starting to see trend in the right direction. His average is up to 280. We talked about him a little bit last time. He's not walking much. That's the thing. His on base is only 298 for somebody that's got 186 at bats. And he's basically drawn 5 walks the whole year. In fact, he's not basically drawn 5 walks the whole year. He's drawn 5 walks the whole year. He was 1 for 12 in his first 4 games of the year, but has been hitting .293 in the 49 games since then. And so, to me, when you look at Lenyn Sosa, you look at somebody that has the foundations to be a cornerstone second baseman. Maybe if he learns how to play third base, that gives him a little bit more versatility as well. But he's somebody that is more reliable than a lot of the right-handed hitters in your lineup and a lot of the guys that you have trotted out to play infield. The development of these two players, these are guys that were in the organization prior to the start of the 2025 season. One of them is your homegrown in Sosa. One of them you picked up from the Dodgers. I think that there's an argument to be made that the development of these two guys is going to give you a lot more clarity for what you need moving forward. And I'm convinced, I said it last time, I'll say it again. I think that this infield developmentally is in a lot better spot than where the outfield is. It's a reason why your infield is young guys like Vargas, Sosa. I was going to say Tim Elko, but he's been sent down. Chase Mydroth, and other guys that Colson Montgomery potentially at some point. The infield is in a lot better shape than the outfield. There's a reason why the outfield is Austin Slater, Michael A. Taylor, Joshua Palacios. There's nobody that has played outfield this year other than Brooks Baldwin, and I'll include Brooks Baldwin in the infield conversation. There's nobody this year that's played in the outfield that you feel like is a true future part of this team. But maybe the White Sox picked one of those guys up in a recent trade, and that is something that we will get to in just a moment. But my point being is that the development of Vargas and Sosa is a positive that makes you feel like there is something here for the future. There's something here that's tangible in the now that we can trust moving forward to be part of a positive future. It somewhat has that 2019 feeling when you felt this way about Tim Anderson and Yoan Moncada and Eloy Jimenez, the guys that were part of the last competitive team that have since fallen off. And by the way, Tim Anderson got DFA'd by the Angels, and I have to wonder whether or not his career is officially over at this point. I hope not. I hope he gets one more shot, but it looked like that one more shot he shot, and it didn't work out the way that anybody had hoped. But the positives are palpable. They're permutating. And it starts with the development of these two infield guys, plus the success of what Chase Mydroth has been. Add in a much better than expected starting rotation in which you have a couple of guys that are going to be part of that rotation in the future. There's no question in my mind that there are guys that are in this rotation right now that are going to be a part of this rotation 2 years from now. I think Jonathan Cannon is proving that once he works through some of his command issues, that he has the type of stuff that can be a 3 or 4 starter. Shane Smith has been elite at times. Sean Burke has been up and down. I'm not as confident in Sean Burke to be a cornerstone of the future. And Davis Martin just continues to be rock solid. And somebody actually brought up the other day, would it be worth trading Davis Martin if he got you some trade value? The answer is no. Don't trade anybody at this point that has value to you in the future. It's just not worth it. To me, it is not worth giving up on somebody that can be a part of your organization in order to acquire more pieces. You've already developed this piece. This piece is under team control. Continue to let it ride with what you have in the rotation and then see where a Noah Schultz or a Hagen Smith ends up fitting in down the line. I think the one weakness of the White Sox rotation currently is that there are no lefties, but I don't think that that's necessarily the worst thing in the world. I think that you see the positives playing out right now at the big league level, and that's something despite the lack of wins, that you've got to be hopeful for. So there have been a couple significant roster moves that the White Sox have made in the past couple of days. And we had talked about on our last episode about the reports of Tim Elko being sent down to Charlotte and how upset I was that that was happening. Well, that was only half the story, because not only was Tim Elko sent down to AAA Charlotte on Friday, so was Andrew Vaughn. And I can only think of, and the White Sox are saying that it was for him to regain confidence, but I can only think of the fact that they need him to put up numbers at AAA in order to regain a confidence that can bring him back to the big leagues, be productive, and then be able to trade him. Because the White Sox essentially demoted both of their first basemen, which is now why Lenyn, Sosa, and Miguel Vargas are both splitting time at first base, and why you're seeing more Vinny Capra in the infield, because Lenyn Sosa is a middle infielder you've taken away, and Miguel Vargas is a middle infielder that you've taken away. So why they demoted Tim Elko, I just feel like the organization just does, for whatever reason, just doesn't want him in their plans. And that's frustrating. I haven't actually looked at what Tim Elko has done since he's gone back down to Charlotte. I'll actually take a look and see what his game logs are. Why does MLB make this page so hard? Like the minor league game log pages are so hard to navigate. It's really frustrating. Okay, we can filter that up there. So, since going back down to Charlotte, he's only played in 3 games and he's got 1 hit and 14 at bats. So, there you go. You've screwed with his confidence by sending him back down to the minors after going 1 for 4. Rather, he had a homer. I don't know. I don't understand what the White Sox are doing here. Apparently, I can't read a stat sheet, and MLB.com's stat page numbers are arcane from like the 1990s. Like, update your software, people, please. But Andrew Vaughn, since going down to AAA Charlotte, is 3 for 14 with a homer and 5 runs driven in. He homered the other night when the Knights were up in Buffalo. And I, for whatever reason, feel like now that Vaughn is going to take at bats away from Elko at the AAA level. So one of them needs to be in the big leagues. One of them needs to be in AAA. Preferably, it's Elko in the bigs, Vaughn in AAA. But who knows what's going to end up happening with this situation organizationally at first base. One of them's going to end up getting traded. I hope it's not Elko, because I think he provides a lot of hope for the future at first base. We've gone round and round and round on this, but I just don't feel like the White Sox are invested in him the way that the fan base is invested in him. So we'll see if he finds a way to get his way back to Chicago. And apologies for the coffee maker over in the kitchen deciding he wanted to go off at this point in time. There was one other move that was made that I was a big fan of, and that was the White Sox trading away Matt Thaiss in exchange for AAA outfielder, although he is injured right now, Dru Baker from the Tampa Bay Rays. And the reason why I have no issue with them trading away Matt Thaiss is, I've said it in the past, I don't think Matt Thaiss has any point being on this baseball team because he's not part of this team's future. What the White Sox did do is they traded somebody that doesn't have a lot of value on the trade market, but has a role as a big league player, to an organization that is, the Rays are a game over 500. They're somewhat competitive for a wild card at this point in the American League, and got a guy that has some upside in Dru Baker. So who is Dru Baker? Dru Baker is, and for some reason, I ended up having an ad playing on the baseball reference page. So apologies for that. If that noise ends up coming through, we're not going to edit that out. We don't have time for that. So whoever's ad was on there, you get whatever free advertising you want. So, but by the way, baseball reference, there's way too many ads that play on those pages. I guess that's, if it's a free website, that's kind of how they have to pay their bills. So apologies, but no apologies to baseball reference for there. But Dru Baker, he was a 4th-round pick out of Texas Tech in 2021. His junior season at Texas Tech, he hit .343 with an on-base of .406. This is somebody that has a lot of speed. He has gradually worked his way through the minor leagues. In 2022, he started with High A Charlotte of the Carolina League, Charleston of the Carolina League, or Low A. Apparently, I can't read because, once again, Baseball References pages are hard to read. It's not MLB.com's pages. I should just stop ranting. But you know what? We're going to skip ahead. We're going to skip ahead to 2023. And this is what he did with Bowling Green of the High A South Atlantic League. He had 13 homers, drove in 39 runs, and had a batting average of 307 with an on base of 396 in 90 games in 2023 in High A. Slugging of 491, OPS of 887. But I mentioned the 13 homers and 39 runs driven in. Last year in Double A Montgomery, his RBI total increased to 44 in 110 games. But he didn't have a single homer. Now, one stat I did leave out is the fact that in Bowling Green in 2023, he stole 38 bases. Last year in Montgomery, he stole 42 bases. He's dealt with injury problems this year, so in 17 games in AAA Durham, he's only hit 245. And then on a rehab assignment with the Florida Coast League Rays, he only had one hit in 15 at-bats. So he's hurt right now. And imagine that he'll be going back down to Arizona to get some rehab with the White Sox at their spring training complex. But he's somebody that you could envision as a top of the order or bottom of the order outfielder with a lot of speed. I like what the numbers, at least at the onset of what he can do, show for maybe somebody that can be a fourth outfielder, maybe somebody that can be your 8 or 9 place hitter and be an everyday outfielder because of the fact he steals bases and gets on base. I'd rather have this guy at 25 years old than Matt Thaiss at this point. Now, the concerning thing about Dru Baker, and one of the reasons why he was probably available in trade, is that he is 25 years old. And somebody that was a 3-year college guy that's 25 years old and is yet to make his major league debut gives you a little concern about his role for the future. But I do think that if you look at what Dru Baker can be, and if he performs well enough at the AAA level once he gets back, he's somebody you should give an opportunity to have big league at-bats, because what does you better for the future? Having Dru Baker hitting in the big leagues, or having Michael A. Taylor and Austin Slater hitting in the big leagues? And Mike Tauchman, I should say. The answer is the younger guy. And organizationally, the White Sox have to be able to, and I think that the MLB draft is going to be critical in this regard. The White Sox have to be able to find guys in the outfield that are going to be a part of this team's future. They need to find future big league outfielders, because right now they don't have any. That's why all of their outfielders are guys that have come from other organizations or Luis Robert, who they have to make a decision on him at some point in terms of whether they trade him or not. We went through that in the last episode. I think that Luis Robert Jr. will still be this team's center fielder come next year until his trade value increases, and it at least buys you some time to be able to find whoever his replacement is. And then if you hope that Andrew Benintendi, given his contract and the fact that you won't be able to trade him, continues to be your everyday left fielder, you at least have some time to develop future outfielders so that your outfield isn't a triage of Austin Slater, Michael A. Taylor, Mike Tauchman, and Joshua Palacios. That's the biggest concern. And you're going to start to see, based on how the numbers develop, I think you're going to end up seeing one of the following: either Slater, Taylor, or Tauchman traded before the trade deadline, because they're guys on 1-year contracts who don't have any future in this organization. And if you look at what other organizations might be able to do in terms of adding a piece for low value at the trade deadline, they can look at an Austin Slater and say, hey, here's somebody that we can, trade a Double-A prospect for and be able to get a platoon outfielder in return. I mean, Austin Slater is somebody that is great against left-handed pitching. I mean, that's the reason why the Giants kept him on their roster for as long as they did. He's great against left-handed pitching. But let's look at his splits this year. Against lefties, he's hitting 250. Against righty, all right. So my point wasn't proven there, effectively. But you understand where I'm coming from in this regard. Somebody will pick one of those guys up, and it won't cost a whole lot in order to get one of those guys. But you hope that it gives you an opportunity to bring somebody back in return. Now, if you're talking about mock drafts and guys that you think maybe this is somebody that could be a part of the White Sox future, I'm looking at ESPN.com's latest mock draft, and they have JoJo Parker, a high schooler out of Purvis, Mississippi, going to the White Sox at 10. The first outfielder off the board they have to the A's at 11, and that's Arizona's Brendan Summerhill. I think that Brendan Summerhill is somebody that, if he was available for the White Sox at 10, they should probably take. Brendan Summerhill is about to start play with Arizona in their regional. I believe they are in the Oregon, the Eugene regional. And by the way, Brendan Summerhill went to Whitney Young High School. He is a Chicago native. Probably grew up a White Sox fan. Brendan Summerhill this season, as I look to navigate to his stats, is hitting .386. 3 homers, 31 RBI, but he's got 10 doubles and 6 triples. On base of .512, slugging of .621. That's an on-base, that's an OPS of over 1,100. If this guy's available, you take him. Plain and simple. You take Brendan Summerhill if he's available. And that immediately becomes somebody that you hope can be in your outfield by 2027. Based on the fact that he's a 3-year college guy and has been a 3-year starter. Like, this isn't a guy that, okay, he's been a 2-year starter. So I lied somewhat. But he's somebody that I feel like you have an opportunity to, and he did miss some time this year due to injury. But he's somebody that now is back and healthy. You know, he basically missed most of the month of April. But he's healthy. He's performing well. You can, because of the fact he missed so many games, be able to feel comfortable with him playing part of a rookie league season this year. And he fits exactly what you need, and that is a cornerstone outfielder. Brendan Summerhill, come back home. That's what we're hoping for at this point. So, that's it. That's all for this edition of Believe in White Sox. Baltimore is next on the docket. And then the Sox come back home for 7 against the Tigers and the Royals. Thanks for watching and listening to this edition of Believe in White Sox. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and do all the things that help make this show grow. Until next time, we'll talk to you a little bit later on. Goodbye for now.